Peace, and I'd like to welcome you back into another edition of the Foul Playland. As always, I'm your foul player, sitting here on my sofa, comfortably watching the Mets game after I ate a burrito. But I just heard the news that Oscar De La Hoya is going to get a fight on Triller, or a rumored fight, if you will. Um, and I want to discuss that. I first came to know about Triller with the Roy Jones Jr. versus Mike Tyson fight, and I actually saw it as a problem because these fights that are happening on Triller are more like within the realm of celebrity matches, if you will, past greats. And it's not that Triller is the problem because they actually did well with that fight. Like I think they sold like 25. I forgot how many pay-per-views. A million, let's say. Who cares? But the problem that I see with all this, and I don't blame Triller. I blame boxing. The reason that Triller and could come into the game, or any entity that's looking to make matches that are bordering on celebrity or not prime boxers, is because these prime boxers, Errol Spence, Bud Crawford, the Charlos, Canelo, um, and the list goes on and on and on, are a bunch of pussies. Like they're putting everything they can into not fighting each other. You're getting to see them fight like when they're already too old. If you're gonna see them fight when they're already too old, I mean, an argument could be made. Why not watch these guys that are already too old, that are 100 times bigger names than them, fight each other now on Triller? So when Floyd Mayweather was fighting, do you think that a retired Oscar De La Hoya could have fought against a retired Mayorga or something and took anything away from Floyd Mayweather? I mean, not to say that that would have not been a pay-per-view attraction at that point, but would it be bigger than any fight happening that year, like Roy Jones Jr. versus Mike Tyson potentially was this past year or whenever they fought? I mean, most people at my job were talking about Roy Jones Jr. and Mike Tyson fighting, and I know for a fact nobody watched that fight live. Like they probably watched on YouTube. I didn't watch that fight. Oh no, I did watch that fight. But I ain't paid for it. But the thing is that, is anybody going to talk about Errol Spence fighting Ugas? They could fight for 9 belts. Is anybody going to talk about Bud Crawford fighting Josecito Lopez? No. Did anybody talk about Crawford fighting Kell Brook? Absolutely not. Did anybody talk about Danny Garcia fighting Errol Spence? No way. Those are ass fights. And the thing is that supposed boxing fans, you guys are the vanguard. You guys are the ones that could talk boxing where 99% of the population doesn't watch boxing, so they can't really talk boxing. You guys are the ones that set the trends. And when you're like going out of your way and saying that Errol Spence is a huge fighter because he's selling 300,000 pay-per-views, people are not stupid. Or like that he's selling 3,000 pay-per-views, 300,000 pay-per-views, and Bud Crawford never sold 300,000 pay-per-views. People are not going to look at Bud Crawford as if he's lesser. They're just going to look at Errol Spence and Bud Crawford as if they're both not shit, because people could count to 300,000. A lot of people have $300,000 worth of equity in their house, or know that they could sell their house for $300,000. It's not a big number. You're not mystifying anybody by saying 300,000. If somebody were to tell me that my record sold 300,000 on iTunes or some shit, I'm not gonna be impressed by them. But that's the problem. With boxing fans today, we've become so fractionalized and so tribalized that rather than force our guys to make these fights, that we're taking the position of trying to pump up our guys and making excuses for them as to why they shouldn't have to take the fight, whether it be on their terms or, and I don't want to hear no bullshit like about what somebody said after the fact, like, because like a lot of people that want to come down on, and I'm only making videos more with a edge on Errol Spence Jr. of late, because it seems like a lot of his core fan base chooses to ignore a lot of the suspicious stuff he said in the past, recently, and his evasion of Bud Crawford. Nobody holds that in their mental Rolodex, but they try to scientifically break down any blink that Bud Crawford does in a negative fashion. Like, I mean, do I think Bud Crawford has been good as far as his PR game goes and as far as his commitment to looking for that fight? No, I'm gonna say absolutely not. Like, but is Errol Spence better? So ask yourself, did Errol Spence or anything Errol Spence has done give you an indication that he wants that fight more than Bud Crawford? And don't give me no bullshit that he made a 60-40 offer. I'm pretty sure that was a contract that was never sent. That was just him talking shit, like when he was drunk, with that outside of a fight. I'm pretty sure no contract was ever sent anyway, like in either direction, and it certainly wouldn't behoove Errol Spence to send the contract and then go blurt it out publicly like he has. These dudes are like the cap generals of the world. Like, it's corny, and being that they set the trends and the precedent, and the standards of how these boxers operate and how boxing is going right now. Prepare for Jake Paul's brother to fight Nick Diaz or some shit from the UFC, and that be a bigger fight than Errol Spence versus Bud Crawford if they ever were to fight. But I could sure as hell tell you that Jake Paul fighting a Labrador would be a bigger fight than Errol Spence versus or Dennis Ugas. I could tell you right now that Coolio fighting Carrot Top or some D-level celebrity is a bigger fight than Josecito Lopez versus Terrence Bud Crawford. And it's not like, and a lot of the Errol Spence fanboys will probably say, oh, well, even that fight, even that is like, you picked a better celebrity for Errol Spence. So I'm just talking out of my ass, but, it doesn't take much to topple your favorite boxer's event as far as sales go, as far as attendance goes, as far as people actually giving a shit and talking about like any of these fights. It doesn't take much for any B or C level celebrity to overtake any of today's primetime boxing events when they're not fighting each other. When the prime guys aren't fighting each other, no one gives a shit about boxing. But you guys want to take a position of not making these primetime guys, quote unquote primetime guys, fight each other. So then cheer them on like when they're buying their farms, and be a sucker and overpay and or to watch a fight for Ugas and Errol Spence. Hopefully they make that fight pay-per-view, and so I can laugh all the way to the bank and hear Errol Spence fans try to sell themselves on why they're buying that fight, and sell other people on why anybody should give a shit or be interested in these whack-ass fights. I'm little by little slowly losing my way out of boxing. I hear a lot of people slide talking like in commentary and saying, oh, well, why don't you just stop watching? I have stopped watching. Like, this past year I haven't ordered, or the past 2 years I haven't ordered any fight. I'm never gonna order a fight again, probably. And do I look at that as like somber? No, I've moved on to other shit. My time watching YouTube boxing shit, I've learned how to invest in that time, how to change the batteries in my car, which I didn't know how to do, how to do minor repairs on sheetrock, or how to put up subway tiles. Like, time invest, like, time spent on good stuff. If boxing were worth the shit, I mean, like, I would still be paying for boxing till this day. But it's not. I'm not gonna buy shit product. I'm no addict like that. And I can't say I'm making a bad investment. Like, thankfully, my son doesn't want boxing. I have enough shitty teams to root for. Um, I'm not spending money on that shit. One of these boxing events, you know, uh, you have 4 or 5 people over, motherfuckers in front, and not bring no, food or some shit. And I don't eat meat anyway. Like, so like, what's you bringing wings to my house gonna do for me? But one of these little shindigs, when you order pay per view, you're talking $300, and then you want to go to the clubs afterwards. Like, that's another, like, you're down 600 in New York. Then you get into a fight in the club or some shit because the fight was boring or something. 3 days in the pen, like, not worth it. I'm done with boxing for the most part. For all intents and purposes, I haven't watched the fight on Fight Night in 2021 yet. I may watch Dillian White and Povetkin, and that's only because he goes on early. Like, I'm usually like trying to go to sleep earlier, like nowadays, and there's usually nothing good on Saturday afternoons. If tomorrow's not a sunny day, that'll probably be the first fight I've watched as it's happening in 2021, and that's sad. I would stop doing whatever I was doing, no matter what. Like, finish my haircut early and not have an appetite from like 5 p.m. on fight night. Like, I gotta Google like who's fighting a lot of times on Friday when these fight weekends happen. Like, I could tell you who's fighting every day. For like 2 months, like what days they're fighting and everything. You know, now I mean, like, who's fighting like on. I can't tell you 2 or 3 fights like from here to June that I give a shit about. We're still in March. Like, so it sucks. Like, if you guys don't think that this thing is slowly disintegrating in front of you, I mean, you must be looking at the wrong thing. But boxing is a dead sport. And it's gonna take one major promoter, and it very likely could be PBC, falling apart, and we may have no sport any longer, until these boxers start making like less than 100,000 per fight. And like, do you think that this generation of boxers is gonna say like, well, I'll buck the trend and like fight for way less? Or like, do you think that people are gonna tune in for those boxers that are willing to fight for way less? I think a lot of people are gonna fight for 10 times less than what they're used to fighting for. But I think these like big guys, like, or people that have already established themselves and made money, are just gonna retire rather than fight for, say 125,000. It could be possible. It could, it's gonna be a real process for these guys to get paid in the future once boxing dies. And it's not that boxing was gonna die; it's that these dudes killed it. The PBC killed it. Top Rank killed it. Matchroom killed it. As much shit I used to talk about Matchroom in the past, I gotta give it to Eddie Hearn. He's the best promoter in boxing right now. As in the classical sense, he's the one that promotes his fights the best, or his fighters the best. Say what you will. He may be skeevy. His dad is a piece of shit. But for what their function should be, as far as being a mouthpiece, somebody that's accessible every day for boxing purposes, he's the last of a dying breed. I mean, he's actually a new breed, if you will. Don King wasn't there every day. He didn't have the capability to do so. It wasn't any YouTube. Bob Arum is dying in front of you. Like, he can't get in front of a camera every day. Al Heyman doesn't speak. Those two twin brothers, like that work at the PBC, I don't know what they do. Somebody said that they're like emissaries or like are like go betweens when these dudes are trying to go to clubs. You should be keeping dudes out of the clubs if you work as a boxing promoter. And their dad, I forget their name, like who gives a shit? Like he's not in front of the camera all the time. He's like with that smug shit like all these other PBC boxers. Who else? De La Hoya. De La Hoya is looking to fight himself. He's probably broke. And was De La Hoya a good promoter? I mean, when De La Hoya had Schaefer, like Golden Boy was knocking. They were producing great fights when it was Al Heyman, Richard Schaefer, and De La Hoya. They had knocking fights at that point. But now, I mean, like Golden Boy lost their principal entity and their promoter, who's probably in his 50s and has cocaine and femininity running through his veins. I mean, is getting set to fight. I mean, it's a sad state of boxing that we're currently enduring through, and I'm making the choice of not enduring through that crap no more. I'm done with boxing. But and worst off too. I mean, I like the only sports that I'm involved with. I mean, like when people were jumping the gun and saying that we shouldn't watch football no more because Kaepernick, like I never took a stand on that, like because I know like I like football, like football is fun to watch. The NBA, like I mean, like I wasn't watching anyway. Like NBA, the product stinks now, and the Knicks suck. Baseball, I'm watching baseball as we speak. Like I mean, and this is a spring training game. Like I stopped what I was doing to come home to watch spring training baseball because the Mets are putting out a good product this year. Even if they put out a shitty product, I watch every Met game. Because I'm a Met fan. It's a can't miss product in my eyes. Is boxing a can't miss product in my nowadays? Absolutely not. I could miss boxing. I could go clean my basement or paint one of the rooms in this house or wash one of my cars. Like, I could ask a stupid question at the bank branch that I go to about a financing possibility or something stupid. I could use that time for way more constructive things than watching a sport that's on its last leg. But let me know what you guys think. With that, I'm out. Peace.